Okay, so I'm now going to show you on how are we going to make the camera follow our player. Okay, so we have here our topic on camera controller. Okay, so as you can see here, I have added two grounds. Okay, ground one. I just copied actually this ground here, so I just copied the other ground on the top and the other ground here. Okay, so there are now three grounds in my game world in which the player can move from here, it could move up to there. Okay, so but as I'm going to run, okay, my game, so you could see here. Okay, so so the player is now hidden from my view. Okay, why it is because the camera is up to this point only. And as I have shown you, the game world features another platform, okay, after this one here. Okay, so what are we going to do is we are going to let the camera follow our player. Okay, so there are two ways on how are we going to do that. First, without any code, we are going to get and attach our camera to our player. Then I'm going to have my camera centered 0 and 0. As you can see, it is now centered into my player. Okay, so you could run. Okay, so as you can see, it is now following our player. Okay, so no matter where the player is going to go, our camera always follows. Okay, so our camera moves X and Y axis. Okay, so here the camera is moving with the X of the player, and here it is also moving with the Y. Okay, so run. Okay, it is scrolling now on top because it is jumping actually. Now it is attached to the ground, so it can jump unlimited. Okay, but what I want to take note with the camera is it follows. Okay, um, it could be X or Y depending on the player. Oh, the position of the player. Okay, so that's one way. Another way is by code. Okay, in which it is much preferred because we could actually control. We have much more control if ever to create a code for our camera. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create here create another script. I'm just going to call that camera. Oops, camera controller. Okay, then double click. Okay, so here are camera controller. So first is we are going to initialize our player. Take note. By the way, I'm going to attach first. Okay. We have here our camera, and I'm going to attach my camera controller. Okay, so we have here now our camera controller. Okay, so first is I'm going to show, or I'm going to initialize my player. Okay, so since we are going to follow the position of the player, so I'm just going to get the transform of the player. Okay, so I'm going to have here transform, then I'm just going to call it player. Okay, now after that I could issue actually here the command game object dot find then player. Okay, so I'm just going to show you that player is equal to game object that find then the name of the player, which is player then that get component the transform. Okay, this is how are you going to find it. Okay, but this is not actually recommended, because if ever we're going to have a lot of game objects that we are going to find, it could affect the speed of our game or the performance of our game. So what is preferred or what is recommended is we are going to serialize our variable. Now I am going to have here serialize field. Okay, so serialize field. Okay, I'm going to save. So how are we going to work with a serialized field? Okay, as you can see here now, okay, we have now the player. Okay, so this player here is the one displayed into our component. Okay, so it is now asking for a transform. Okay, and we are going to name it player, and naturally it is our player. Oops, going back. So I'm going to click and drag it here. Okay, so Unity now knows that this transform here is the game object player. Why? Because we have now attached it here. Okay, so therefore I'm not going to, I'm just going to leave it here. Okay, because this is another way, but again this is preferred compared with this one here. Okay, so in our update, so we're just going to follow then, or the fix update, or as of now we're just going to have the update. Okay, so we have transform. So transform with small letter t, meaning it is the transform of the game object to where this script is attached to. And we have here, it is the transform, meaning it is the camera. And when you say transform, because we are going to get our position. Okay, so transform dot position is equal to new vector 3. Okay, then a vector 3 is we have x, y, and z. So why do we have x, y, and z? It is because our camera has value for our z, which is negative 10. Okay, so first for the z, so we are going to still get the transform dot position dot z. So the z of the camera is not going to change, and also with our y dot position dot y. So therefore, whatever will be the y of our camera, it is going to stay as it is. Okay, and what is going to change only is our x. Why? It is because we are going to follow the horizontal movement of our player. So we're going to have here player dot position dot x. Okay, so save. By the way, I'm going to have my camera back to the center. We have 0. Oops, there is an error. Position. Okay, so we have it here. Position, position, position. Okay, so save. Okay. Okay, so as you can see, our camera did not move, but our player is now moving. But as I'm going to move to the left and to the right, so our camera is now following our player. Okay, so left or right. So the player maintains at the center of our screen. No, not really the center, but the camera still at the center of our screen. Now, how about if ever that I'm going to have, I'm going to change the position of the player on the x-axis on, let us say we're going to have a larger view on the right. Okay, so that is what we're going to do. So I'm going to have I'm going to initialize here a float. I'm going to call it offset x is equal to, okay, I'm going to have as 3.0 or 3. Anyway, you could experiment or play with the values here. Then I'm going to add plus offset x. That's for our y. No, x I mean. So if you want to change the y, actually, you could also have an offset. Okay. So save. Okay, so as you can see, we have now, even though I am going to move, okay, so we have now a larger area in our right side because I have adjusted, so I have added 3, okay, to the X position of our camera. Okay, if ever that you want to be centered, so do not add any offset. Okay. Okay, so that's how are we going to make our camera follow our player. Again, I want you to take note of the serialized field and the find method. Okay, for the serialized, okay, if ever it is serialized, so it is going to ask for a value into our inspector. Okay, so we could get an object here, then click and drag to our, in this case, we have our player. Okay, but if ever you don't want to have a serialized field in which actually serialized field is being recommended, but just in case you don't like it, then just use the find method for the game object class. Okay, anyway, this is more readable now because as you can see, find the player and get the component, particularly the transform component. Okay, but again, as you are going to get used to this one, it is much better to use the serialized field. Okay, so this is the basic way on how are we going to control the position of our camera.